Alright, so in continuing on, if you look at the Capstone Resources folder, the document that I would like to point out right now is the UMass example of DNP project, table of contents. So don't get lost in the whole thing. This is just one example of how a proposal, and this is actually the completed project, was constructed. I've highlighted the items here that should go into the proposal, and so you can just take a look through there, and I encourage you to look at the review of the literature, and you can look up several others too. This is actually part of the process of creating a capstone project, or even dissertation. For any review of the literature, you want to look at how others flow and then what makes sense with your project. So you can see here they did, this person used a methodological approach, which may very well make sense. So the way you construct yours at the beginning, this is how they're all done, is that you sort of, you put it in a future tense, especially when you talk about the methods that you will be using. And then once you complete your project and you're reformatting this for completion of your project, you will put it in past tense, because then you will have conducted your project and you will have your data, you'll have your results, and then you'll be speaking to that. So if we look at the proposal instructions, which I have placed in week 7 because that's when it's due, along with your IRB application. And I know it's a lot of work, it is. So we're moving right along here. So the proposal instructions and rubric, and I wrote in here, it's highly encouraged for students to search the literature for examples of capstone projects and refer to the methods section as well. Again, even though these are DNP capstones, and I'm speaking of the examples I reference here with University of Massachusetts, they are of high quality, which is why I want to point them out, and you get a wide variety, and it's great that they have open access to it. So you are to include your purpose, similar to what I just showed you in the table of contents, your model theory, which you already have chosen, your intended participants, where the location is, please be specific, and the facility. So just because you know each other very well at this point doesn't mean that the person reading it, who is going to actually be the head of our IRB committee, will not know. So you're going to have to say in what state, town, facility, unit, be very specific about that. And then the method you plan to use, which if you're not really sure at this point, then that's again something you need to have a conversation with your mentor, and so whatever those preferred methods of communication are that you've established. And then you need to really mull over any potential human rights issues. You may think, well, it's a survey, so there really aren't any. There always are. You even have to consider the fact that someone could be typing too much and it could cause wrist strain. I mean, you really do have to think of every little thing. And it's largely just the fact that you have considered it. So make sure that you do think of that, and then you include any aspects within your IRB submission there. So let me switch topics a little bit here, and I want to say, and there's not really anything to look at this point, sorry, I'll just be talking for a few moments. So you all remember the virtual cloud Dropbox I had you create back in 502. And I think you've used it, hopefully, along the way for other courses. So now is the time, while you are saving your articles, to upload them to your cloud. So whether you choose to use that Dropbox or whether you choose to use something else, I highly, highly encourage you, I cannot encourage you enough, to go to your Dropbox and to just create a folder and be very diligent about keeping great organization. So if you know that you kind of struggle with organizing things, now is the time to really step it up and get really organized, because this is going to save you a lot of trouble later. So I would say, title your folder something like MSN 591. Within that, you may want to maybe have a folder that includes, let's say here, methods articles. Or maybe you just want to have a folder that says, that is articles. Okay? You may want to have another folder that is proposal drafts. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So going here, I'm going to share something else with you in a moment. So actually, let me pull up an actual article here. Okay, so what I want you to do to save yourself a world of pain is to please try to learn from mistakes of others who have done things the hard way before. So I'm using my actual computer. So say this was an article that you found. Okay. Anyway. Okay, let me just use one here. We'll just use that same one I have open. What I want you to practice doing is to save your article, and this will help you immensely every time you choose it. So I know that when you go into the online library, it generates a URL. That's true. But honestly, you might feel like, oh, well, that's, a good option. Not necessarily. I've had it happen plenty of times when you click on that URL and it does not work. And I have no idea why. I wish I did, but it doesn't. And that's a problem, because later on, especially when you're putting this together in the fall, or after you're allowed to do your project, you're going to want to go back to some of these articles and reread them and look for more information in these same articles as you found, because they're good articles, or you wouldn't have chosen them, and you may not be able to find them. So take the author's last name. In this case, it's Fraser Johnson, and then I would encourage you to take maybe the first couple words of whatever the article is and save it that way. So okay, so if I'm saving this here, I would save it as Fraser Johnson. So I go to my computer, and this just takes a few seconds. I was taking a little longer now because I'm trying to get it together, but if you do this, so always use underscore because it doesn't like special characters other than that, and then maybe just EVP. Okay. There you go. But if you do this each and every time versus just relying on that reference that you're generating for me weekly and for your weekly discussions, you will be able to locate these. You'll be able to retrace your steps and follow those breadcrumbs. So every time you go into the online library, which I know has been acting up a little bit, but if you go into the online library and there's that one little button, it looks like this. It's like a shadow. When you go and click on your articles you're reviewing, download it. Use that button, download a computer every single time. Even if you're like, gee, I'm not really sure if I like that article, I may use that article later, you probably want to save that because you may not be able to find it again. So that's just words of wisdom. I hope you take it and use that. Here's another thing. So download every article, save it to a cloud. You cannot save things enough to a cloud. Okay, I'm going to highly suggest to you also that you create something like this. It can look however you want, but what you want to do is remember those videos that you had for 574 about how to do the searches. So you want to type in here your search terms, and I was working with a student to create this, but it helps to make sense if we have something to go by. So here in this first column, I would type your first search terms. This would be in that first window within the library. And then here would be your second term. And I would also write whether you put and or for this search term. And then you may want to type in here, this turned out, 857 search results. You may want to put a few notes in here. You may want to put not very good results, whatever the case may be. But you do want to keep track, because after you search these for so long, you're going to start thinking, did I already search these terms? Oh, I'm sure I've searched these terms because I've been doing this for so long, and I've looked through hundreds, web page or library pages. Well, you may start to forget because you looked at it so many times. You might think you were sure about what you searched, what key terms you used, but in reality, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. And it's that maybe you didn't that's going to really be detrimental, because you want to identify gaps in the literature, and so you need to construct a way to keep track of what your search results are. Speaking of notes, you can put down in here different ideas, and remember back where you would start to type in a word. Maybe you would think, oh, I'm going to type in nursing, or I'm going to type in nurse. But if you remembered from that lesson, you might want to type in NURS, just that prefix, and then the asterisk, which will give you everything, every version of that. Nurse, nursing, anything that it could possibly generate, and it will help your search. Another tip is to save yourself time, and hopefully you realize this when you go in that online library, to, after you type in your search terms, whether it's and, or whatever, click on full text down below. I would really not suggest clicking too many things down there at this point, because you want to keep your search very broad, but I would suggest that one, because otherwise it'll give you all the abstracts of many articles, but it may not be a full text, and that really doesn't help you, since you need the full text, and you'll want to come back to that article later. So I will take out these words and just leave this as a blank template in the course here at the top in that resources folder for you. But I would keep track of your searches. It may seem like another little step, but it's a little step that's going to help you save a lot of time. So let me know what questions you have as you move along, and I hope this is helpful.